Hi, everyone.
Hi, Mariko. Good evening.
How are you?
We're good. We're happy to have you here.
Good. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you.
Awesome. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Mariko Fairly, and I am a board certified behavior analyst and behavior coach here on ParentGood. And tonight we're going to be talking about understanding the why behind our children's challenging behaviors. And just a hint, it actually applies to adults too. So if you're having trouble sort of figuring out why anyone in your life may be acting the way that they do, we're going to kind of delve into those different reasons. So let me just give you a little bit of background on myself. I have my bachelor's in psychology from UCLA, and I have a master's in special education. And then I'm also a board certified behavior analyst, and behavior analysis sort of falls under the umbrella of psychology. So it's the science of behavior and behavior change. And so when I work with a family, I'm really trying to figure out what is going on underneath the surface. Sort of the general theme of tonight is that all behavior is communication. And so we're going to really delve deep into that. I worked with children with autism and developmental disabilities for about 17, 18 years before I started my own practice. I was the clinical director of an agency that provided one-to-one therapists for children with autism. And now I'm on my own, and I'm on ParentGood, and I'm loving what I'm doing, working with all different kinds of families. I'm also a mom. I have two kids. I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. And I use all of the strategies that I'm going to share with you in just daily parenting life. All of the strategies that I use are evidence-based, meaning they are backed by research. They are proven to be effective. So everything that I'm going to share with you and that I use with my kids is evidence-based. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. I want to just kind of give you a rundown of what we're going to talk about today. And if you guys have any questions, you can put them in the chat box. If I see them and they're relevant, then I will try to answer them live. But if not, we're going to save time at the end so that we can go through your questions. Okay. So today we're going to talk about why behaviors happen and all of the different reasons. There are 4 main reasons why people behave the way that they do. And we're going to talk about why it's so important to figure out the why. So many times, I think we as parents, we are so busy. Life is crazy. You have work, children, household tasks, and we just react without necessarily figuring out the underlying reason why. And figuring out the why really helps us respond in a way that will benefit our kids long term. It'll reduce the challenging behavior over time, but more importantly, it reduces it because it's getting our child's needs met. And that's such an important thing when we have little ones. Okay, so I wanted to just kind of give an example of a challenging behavior that many of you guys may be experiencing. So let's say your kiddo, it's, after dinner, everybody's relaxing, and maybe you say something like, okay, guys, time to turn off the TV. It's time for bed. And your child then may whine or scream or run around the house, because you assume that they don't want to go to bed. But beyond that, right, we have to ask ourselves, why might they not want to go to bed? And we're going to talk about the possible reasons why. But I think what we often do as parents is we often react, right? That's for some reason when our kids whine or cry or tantrum, it can be really triggering for us. I admit that as a parent myself. And so we may say like, oh, it's just no big deal. Like you can watch TV tomorrow, or like, stop acting that way. We might get into a negotiation with them. Like, okay, 5 more minutes. We might start yelling. We might threaten to take away a privilege. If you don't go to bed right now, you're not going to get any screen time tomorrow. So those reactions that we may have as parents, those are really normal, common reactions. And they may or may not stop a behavior in the moment, but probably they're not stopping it long term, right? Because we need to figure out why they don't want to go to bed. So one suggestion I'm going to have, and it's kind of a framework for how you can tackle any challenging behaviors, is the first thing is figure out what the behavior is that you don't really like, the one that you want to change. Define it. Figure out exactly when it's happening. You're going to take a step back, observe, literally take notes. So when I work with families, sometimes I give them a sheet for them to fill out so we can start identifying patterns. Does that behavior happen every day at 5 o'clock? Does it happen every time they hear the word no? Does it happen every time their sibling is in the picture or they're playing with their sibling? Does it happen maybe when you're on the phone or you're busy, right? We want to track all of these things to figure out, okay, what may be causing them that upset, whatever it is, whether it's hitting, kicking, biting, screaming, refusing to go to bed, throwing things, all of that. So those are the first two steps. Figure out what the behavior is that you want to change, and then start to notice things about it when it's happening. What happens before the behavior and what happens after the behavior? What is your reaction? What are they getting out of it after they do that behavior? From there, we can figure out why the behavior is happening. And there are 4 main reasons why. People want something, they don't want something, they're seeking attention or connection, or it feels good inside when they're doing that thing. So once we kind of figure out which one or two of those 4 reasons is at play, then you can come up with a plan that addresses that need, right? We will have to address the need in order to change the behavior. If we just have a blanket response for everything, like a timeout or taking away a toy or giving them what they want, that's not necessarily going to solve the problem. And so that's why we want to be observant and we want to be clear about what the issue is so that we can address it in the right way. Okay, so let's kind of break that down. The first reason people behave the way that they do, I don't know. Maybe you guys can answer that for me. Is this going to be recorded and viewed later? Awesome. Okay. So the first reason that people may behave in a certain way is because they want something. Maybe your child is whining because they really want to watch a show. Maybe, they're grabbing a toy out of their sibling's hand because they really want to play with that toy, or maybe they're hitting them to get that toy. Maybe they're crying because their favorite blue bowl is dirty and they can't have it in that moment. Maybe whenever you let them know, hey, we're all done with this activity, they start screaming. So all of those things, if we're looking at the before, not just the behavior, but if we're looking at the before, we can figure out, okay, they really want something. So I'm going to have to teach them a more appropriate way to ask for that something, whether you teach them a sign or a gesture or a word or a phrase to get that need met. What if it's a situation where you feel the children can't control what they're doing, like impulsive reactions? My son cried and said he felt very confused. He heard voices, very focused, very intelligible, honorable student has always been. That's a great question. I think that I'll save that one till the end because we might need to break down a little bit more what's happening. But thank you, Darshana, for that question. So hold it and bring it up in a little bit, okay? So those are some examples of a child really wanting something. Okay, So the opposite of that would be not wanting something, right? Or they don't want to do something that you've asked them. Any kid, doesn't want to do their homework, or maybe they're running away at bedtime. Maybe you put broccoli on their plate and that broccoli ends up getting thrown on the floor. A child who's having a hard time in school, maybe a lesson is really difficult for them. They might put their head on the table. Even something as simple as there's a loud noise or a siren, there's a police car driving down the street and they cover their ears, right? They're trying to get away from something that they don't like. And that could be a variety of things. So they want something, they don't want something. The third reason that people behave the way that they do is because they're seeking connection and attention, right? This is so important with children, with everybody. Humans are wired for connection. And so we have a basic need that we need to meet with our children. And I think as kids get older and they are enrolled in school, there are so few hours in the day, sometimes it feels like, to be able to meet that need for connection and attention. So, if you had a child who maybe has some separation anxiety and you drop them off somewhere and they cry when you leave, or you notice that every time you get on the phone, your child starts screaming or hitting you. Maybe you tuck your kid into bed and they either come out of bed or they call out to you. Those are needs for attention and connection. And so I'm going to share a few strategies later that can help you address that need as just a basic thing that you're doing every day with your kid. Okay. So again, 3 so far: want something, don't want something, seeking attention and connection. The fourth reason why people behave in the way that they do is because it feels good, right? So if you have a kiddo who's maybe jumping on the couch or hanging upside down off the couch, maybe they're getting something inside their body that feels good. We all do these things, by the way. I'm doing it right now. You twirl your hair, right? Or you tap your pen, right? For kids who suck their thumb or use a pacifier, sometimes it's really hard to get rid of those supports because it helps them feel good. It helps them calm. It helps them regulate. And so it's hard to compete with that, right? If they're getting some intrinsic reinforcement from it, if they're getting something that feels good inside their body. Other things that are really common are like watching a TV show and listening to music. It does help calm people. It lets you veg out. Some people, it's like scrolling on their phone. And so we do those things because they feel good to us. Okay. So let's go back to our example that I gave at the beginning of the kiddo. We told, hey, it's time for bed. And they start whining and crying and running around the house. So what was your assumption of why they did that, right? Did you think, oh, they just don't want to go to bed? So it could be that they don't want to go to bed. That's totally possible. But it also could be maybe they really want something. They want that TV show. Maybe that's their favorite show and you asked them to turn it off 5 minutes before it was over. Or they just want to watch it as much as possible because TV feels good. It's also possible that they know that bedtime means that's a separation from you. I think it's really important for us parents to remember that bedtime is generally our kids' longest separation from us if you don't sleep in the same room with your child. So they may have a hard time separating from us. And it's really important to have that consideration, right? And remember, the key is all behavior is communication, right? So we need to figure out in that moment, what is my child trying to tell us? And how can I teach them to tell me in a more appropriate way? And ideally, how can I give them that need in that moment or other times during the day? Okay. So how do we figure out why a behavior is happening? We know it's either they want something, they don't want something, they need attention, or it feels good. But how do we figure out which one of those things it is? So the first question we want to ask ourselves is, what happens before the behavior? Did someone say something? Did someone tell them to do something? Was I busy and I wasn't paying attention? Did I tell them, no, sorry, you can't have that? Was their sibling involved? Do you always notice a pattern with like a specific task? Every time you brush your teeth or you ask them to brush their teeth, there's a big, screaming tantrum, or every time it's time to get in the bath, right? Try to notice those patterns. Does separation in the house harder than separation when they go to school? Depends on the kid, but I would say that, anytime you're separating from your child, whether it's nap time or school or your work, that can be difficult for them. Absolutely. I hope that answers your question. If not, please follow up. And then going back to patterns, like, is it always math that leads to a challenge? Is it a specific place every time we go to grandma's house, or a specific time of day, or a specific person? Do you notice that dad always gets a lot of tantrums, or mom gets a lot of tantrums? All of that is very normal, by the way, but it can be really taxing for that person for sure. So when we're trying to figure out the why, we look to figure out what happened before the behavior. And that plays into what happens after the behavior. So we can't just assume that we know because of, okay, well, every time we do math, they don't want to do it. Okay, let's also look at what happens after. Every time they scream and throw their pencil when it's math time, do I let them get up and go watch TV for 5 minutes before I have them come back and try again? So these things are really important. Did they get what they wanted? Did they get out of what they didn't want to do? Did I pay a lot of attention when they started doing that unwanted behavior? Those are really good questions to ask. And I think, challenging behaviors are so triggering for us. And again, we may have that reaction, but one of the things that we can do is ask ourselves, like, okay, did I pay more attention when they did the thing I didn't want them to do than when they asked appropriately? Because whatever we pay attention to is what we're going to keep seeing. So if you're feeling like, gosh, my kid is whining all the time, it's driving me crazy, I don't know what to do, check yourself. Like, are you saying, hey, stop that? Or, oh my gosh, stop whining? Our kids hear no and don't and stop all day long, and we don't even realize we're saying it. So do your best to highlight and acknowledge all of the good things that they're doing, because they're doing them. I promise they are. Whenever they ask nicely, say, wow, thank you for asking so nicely. Here you go. That's awesome. Or I love the way you helped your sister put on her shoes. Things like that. They're doing really, really appropriate, kind things, and we want to make sure that we acknowledge them so that those things keep happening. Okay. So a few strategies for you guys when we are just trying to set our kids up and ourselves up for success. I have a few kind of like my top 5 tips that I can share with you. So the first one addresses that a need for attention and connection. Really try your best. Don't stress if you can't do it, but try to give your child one-to-one time every day. 5, 10, 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be for too long. The key is quality over quantity. Okay, so I see your question, Ashley. So we'll talk about this in just a second. So the need for attention and connection is so great in every human, but especially for our kids. And again, the more separation they have from us, the stronger that need is for attention and connection. And so if you can give 10 minutes a day, put your phone away, no screens, go into ideally their room if you can, because you want to build a positive association with their room. So bedtime is not as big of a struggle, but let them lead. If they want to play Barbies for 10 minutes, play Barbies for 10 minutes. If they want to dress you up for 10 minutes, do that. If they want you to bark like a dog for 10 minutes, do that. It's really about letting them lead, giving them your focus, your attention, your energy, and not directing and not correcting. So this is not the time to nag them for not using their words or things like that. Okay. Can you touch on the idea of ignoring the behavior? What does that look like in an attachment connection based on that encourages the behaviors you'd like to see? Okay. So we hear a lot of that in kind of parenting recommendations is ignore the behaviors that you don't want to see. So here's the thing with attention. In theory, the opposite of attention is ignoring, right? So first of all, when you're employing this strategy, it's always the recommendation to ignore a behavior, not a child. You never ignore the child. So, you don't want to say like, oh, I'm ignoring him right now. No, you may be ignoring whining, but you're also trying to coach appropriate language and definitely responding when they're speaking appropriately. So if my kid was coming to me, mommy, 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 and I just did not want to hear that whining, I might say, sweetie, I need you to use your strong voice and then maybe model, mommy, may I have juice, please? They can repeat that or they can sign it or gesture. Again, even if your child is pre-verbal, there's still a way to communicate. I will have them sort of mimic what I'm saying, imitate what I'm saying, and then give my attention for the appropriate thing, right? So we can still ignore an unwanted behavior as long as we're teaching the appropriate replacement behavior to get that need met, right? Okay. And again, if we're spending one-to-one time I highly recommend baby sign language too. It is a lifesaver. Teach the basic signs more. You can do want, you can do eat, and all done. Those are like the basic ones that I would suggest doing at a minimum. If we are fulfilling that that attention and connection need within the one-to-one time, it will actually prevent some challenging behaviors. So, I like that. Yeah, toilet or diaper. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Michelle, you asked, what's a follow-up question to Ashley's in a school or daycare setting? How you would ignore a behavior? That's a little challenging for me because I would need to kind of know more about like what the behavior is and all of that. So maybe you can give me a little bit more info. I'm specifically talking about one-to-one time between parent and child in the home setting, but obviously it applies to all caregivers if possible. In school, it's really challenging. Okay, so setting you and your kids up for success, one-to-one time every day, positive phrasing. So again, because our kids are hearing, gotcha, thank you, Michelle. Because our kids are hearing, no, don't stop all day long, it's really important that we tell them what to do instead of what not to do, right? So instead of saying, stop whining, we might say, please use your nice voice or your strong voice. Instead of saying, stop jumping on the couch, you might say, you can sit on your knees or your bottom. Instead of saying, no throwing, you might say, you can throw in here in this bucket, or you can put your food in this bowl that you don't want, okay? If a baby is 6.5 months old, they started to grunt to communicate. That's an early sign of communication. You can actually start baby sign language about 6 months, even if they don't imitate you or use it on their own until closer to 10 or 12 months. What I would do is if your child is pre-verbal and they're grunting, just narrate or label what they want. So if you think that they want like food, then you can say eat, or mama, and you're basically substituting the language for them so that as they're capable of saying it themselves, they'll know what to do. Okay. For a child who's tantruming in daycare, I would say that you still want to help the teachers figure out the why. And they would do that the same way that we talked about. Look at what's happening before the behavior and what's happening after. There's always a reason, right? Do they want something? Do they not want something? Do they need attention, or does it feel good? Okay. All right. So more tips for setting you up for success. One-to-one time, positive phrasing, tell them what to do. Give choices. So a lot of times our kids act out because they feel out of control, right? We're telling them what to do all day long, and they want a say over what's happening to their body and in their life, right? And I think especially if you have a toddler, toddlers are going back and forth between, am I a baby? Am I a big kid? Am I a baby? Am I a big kid? Throughout the day. And so giving them choices helps them feel in control. Do it as much as you can. Do you want blueberries or raspberries? Do you want the blue plate or the red plate? Do you want the Spider-Man jammies or the Peppa Pig jammies? Do you want to brush your teeth first, or do you want to go potty first, right? There's a ton of choices that you can give your child throughout the day. Don't forget to praise the behaviors you want to see more of. Praise, 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 acknowledge, and do it genuinely, right? Oh my gosh, thank you so much for helping me. Or I love the way that you listened the first time. Or, oh, wow, you're sitting so nicely in your chair. Anything that you want to happen again, make sure you acknowledge it and be specific, right? You don't just want to say like, good boy, good job, but tell them the behavior that you really want to see again. Okay. I'm having an issue with my 7-year-old listening. Oh, shoot, it went away. She's been ignoring a lot and totally feels sidetracked. I'm asking her to do something. Okay, so definitely ignoring can be a challenge. I would try a couple of things. Make sure that they really truly hear you, right? So stop what you're doing, walk over to them, put your hand either on what they're doing or on their arm so that you can get some eye contact, and then deliver your instruction. And we always tell kids what to do, not ask them, right? Because if you say, oh, do you want to go potty? That certainly opens it up for them to say no. Or are you ready for dinner? They could say, nope. So instead, you're just going to be calm and confident in being able to say, okay, it's dinner time. Go wash your hands, please. You can always be kind, but firm. Okay. I would also say using first, then language can be really helpful to increase cooperation. So first, we're going to do your writing assignment, and then you can play video games. First, we're going to put on your shoes, and then we can go outside and play with bubbles. First, we're going to clean up the blocks, and then you can watch a show. So first, then, it just teaches them that they're going to get something that they want. They just have to do this thing first. Okay. And I think it's really helpful to be playful too. So if you're noticing that, like with brushing teeth, your kiddo just, it's a fight every single time to do it. We've got to figure out the why and figure out what we can do instead. So maybe it's not a choice to brush your teeth, but they can choose what toothpaste or what toothbrush they want. Or maybe you say, oh, do you want to hop like a bunny or march like a dinosaur to the bathroom? Or do you want to listen to the Elmo song or the Daniel Tiger song when you brush your teeth? So there's always a choice to be made. And I think being playful with those things, sometimes, right, we get so stressed out. It's a long day and we just want to be done with a task. But we have to remember that for our kid, this is time with us. And maybe it's something that they don't really want to do. And for us, being playful can help them get through it a little bit better, a little bit faster, right? We have to understand what that need is. And when we're dealing with a challenging behavior, I can give you like a few steps to follow as well. So we want to understand what the need is. Again, want something, don't want something, need attention and connection. It feels good. And then once we know the why, we acknowledge it. I understand you really want another cookie, or I can see you're really frustrated right now. Or your sister took your toy and you really want it back, right? So you're going to acknowledge the want or the need one time, because everybody needs to feel validated, right? Even kids. Then in that moment, you might offer a choice. Okay, cookies aren't available, but you can have yogurt or banana. Or in the situation where maybe there's sibling fights, you might offer them an opportunity to redo the situation where say, okay, your sister grabbed your toy, let's ask for it back. Okay, and you kind of walk them through the steps of being able to do that. Okay. I see a ton of questions, so I'm going to try to scroll through. If I missed your question, please retype it. Okay. My kid screams and cries every time I leave for work. I feel like I've tried everything. Other times she just screams and throws a fit. Can't get him out no matter what. He's 3.5. Okay. This is hard. I mean, separation anxiety can definitely go on beyond that point. And I don't know if you've been home or now you're going back to work, but I would say that try spending one. I know it's a little crazy in the morning probably, but if you can spend a little one-to-one time before you leave for work, that would be ideal. And then as soon as you come back, again, spend one-to-one time. So when our kids are having a hard time with separation, a couple things are really important. The first one is that you don't sneak out. It might seem easier to sneak out because you don't have to deal with the big tantrum right away. But at some point, whoever's left with the kid is going to have to deal with that tantrum. And having a routine and predictability is actually really helpful for kids. So I would have the same good morning, goodbye routine every day that you're leaving for work, right? So maybe that would involve like a little bit of playtime, a cuddle, I love you, I'll be back late after your nap, whatever it is. Use the same language every day. That will become a routine. It will become predictable, and routines help our kids feel safe and secure. And then when you come home, also incorporate a routine. I'm home. I missed you. I was thinking about you. Cuddle and sit down to play for a moment. Over time, it'll get better. I know that one's a really big challenge. Okay. What about a child responding with the opposite? For example, I say, wow, you had a great day today. No, it's bad. Throwing my toys is good. Okay. Yes, this is really common too. So one thing I would say is it's hard to sort of get out of this, but once you can, I think it'll be really helpful. Try not to categorize kids or behaviors as good and bad when you're talking to them. So when we say things like, oh, you're such a good boy, or you're such a good kid, or you had such a good day, the implication is that when you're not saying that they're bad, they're being bad, they're doing bad things, or the situation is bad. So I would try to start labeling really specific behaviors like, thank you for helping me. I love when, you were helping me pick up the toys. I really appreciate it. Maybe, you're already doing that acknowledgement, but maybe just changing the language you're using would be really helpful. Another thing I think that sometimes happens when we ask our kids to do something and they do the exact opposite of it, that could be for different reasons. Again, we have to figure out the why, but I often find that's for attention and connection. There's something in our reaction that's maintaining that behavior of doing the opposite. So again, spend that one-to-one time, use positive phrasing, acknowledge all of the appropriate things that they're doing. That should help with some of it. Okay. What if he contradicts everything you say or do? Once you explain what just happened and it needs to happen the right way, like, oh no, you didn't mean that. You didn't want me to play with my toy, or that's not true what you're saying. This is where, going back to Ashley's question about ignoring, I'm not saying to ignore all of these questions completely, but I think sometimes we can sort of take this as a desire to connect and get our attention, right? So I might not respond to every single one of those questions and take it as a bid for attention. So maybe saying like, hey bud, do you want to play a game with me? Or if you're feeling, I'm just trying to think of what specific, you don't want me to play with my toy. Maybe they're asking you, do you want to play with me? I'm not sure I'm understanding that correctly now that I'm rereading that. But sometimes when our kids are like saying these things, it's really their way of saying, I want you to pay attention to me. Will you do this thing with me? And they don't know how to communicate that appropriately. So you can model it, you can offer it. And And it's okay to, like, if you've already said an answer to something, you can say, I already said, I already answered that. We're going to do it in 10 minutes. You don't have to turn around and respond to it every single time. You can say, like, okay, we'll do this in 10 minutes and then move on. What about using smart choice and poor choice? Yeah, I like that. I think that sounds like something like a teacher would say. Make a good choice or make a smart choice. Yeah. Or make it, maybe instead of poor choice, it'd be like a different choice. I've heard that a lot too with different kids and different families. Yeah. Marian, if you want to give me a little more information about this, I want to make sure I'm answering your question in a way that's going to be helpful for you. Okay. So again, I think that when we are trying to figure out what our kid is communicating to us in a given situation, we want to figure out what the need is and try to meet the need. And if a kid's needs are not getting met, you're going to keep seeing challenges, right? And they're probably going to escalate over time. And so it's really important for us to figure out the why so it doesn't get to the point where, gosh, you don't know what to do anymore. I want to talk a minute about just like giving in and what that does to challenging behaviors in the future. So let's say you're on the phone and your child says, Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. It's a pretty appropriate way to try to get your attention, right? But you're on the phone. It's really important. You're not able to talk. And they start kind of like tapping your hand. Okay. You're still not able to, you're just like kind of like, no, can't help you right now. Then the tapping gets harder and it becomes a hit. And then they start yelling, right? And once they're hitting and screaming and yelling, then you turn around and say, What do you want? So giving in that moment actually was reinforcing that really high intensity scream and hitting behavior, as opposed to when they were asking you really nicely. So it's okay to give in. We have to, right? Again, we're trying to meet our kids' needs while holding boundaries. So if you're going to have to give in low. Give in to the whine as opposed to the huge 10-minute tantrum. Because what's going to happen is the next time your kid needs something, they're going right back up here because that's where the need was met. So just kind of look at it as a continuum, right? Of low level, appropriate behavior all the way up to really, really intense, challenging behavior. If you're going to give in low, okay? And obviously, if you're trying to establish a boundary, it's important to try to hold that boundary the best you can. Okay, Andrea says, what is the best way to respond to your child when they call themselves a bad boy when you keep reminding them they're a good boy? Oh, that's tough. Yeah. Again, I would make sure you're modeling language that's not good or bad boy or good or bad kid. And, you can say, you're a good kid. I love you. You're, and just maybe like if a lot of times it's like they make a mistake or they think you're mad at them. And so you can just be specific and label the behavior that they're upset about, and then just talk about like what they could do instead, right? It's a little, you don't want to use too much language because they're 2.5, but I would just sort of acknowledge that need under there, right? Is it figure out, right? Is it for attention or is it because they don't want to do something or something is hard? So that you can teach them to ask for a hug, teach them to ask for help, teach them to ask for time with you. When we tell him no to something he wants or wants to do, he screams and then starts throwing things. Again, we have to figure out the why, right? We're going to assume that when you tell them no, it's because they want something that they can't have, right? So what you can do is acknowledge, I understand you really want more TV. It's not available right now. Then give them a choice. You can play with blocks or you can play with cars. Okay. And try to shift away from the thing that they can't have right now. What I love about choices is it moves them towards something that is available, that they can have or can do, right? So when they start screaming and throwing things, monitor your reaction as well. You don't want to start yelling at them or threatening to take something away. You want to just acknowledge, I get it, it's hard, you really want that. You can also tell them like when it's going to be available next. You can have that after dinner, or you'll get to play more tomorrow, and here's what's available now. Okay. With consistency, it will work. It's not a perfect thing, but most kids do learn like it's better to make a choice. They're still going to get something that they want when you give them a choice. Okay, Marion, when he's upset, I explain what the right way to do is. He challenges the situation, contradicts the explanation that was given. I say, you should do it this way. But he's like, that's not the right way to do it. Or if he's bad at school, I tell him, you're doing your best, but I know you can do better. And he says, you want me to have a bad time at school. Yeah, that's really difficult. If you want to schedule a 15-minute call with me, Marion, we can sort of break that apart a little bit more and figure out exactly what's going on. I think when kids are making like self-deprecating comments or pushing back on compliments that we're giving them, there's probably some underlying reason. I would guess, something's going on, something's difficult for him. But maybe you can also try to spend some one-on-one time with him that's not involving anything hard or related to school. I know it's really tricky when they are in school, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of time, but maybe just like getting down and playing with him, doing things that he wants to do, he may open up to you a little bit more. Okay, when parents are separated and the kids go to the other parents during the weekend, how would I be able to calm them back down after the weekend? I'm not quite sure. I might need a little more information there, but yeah, it's really hard when you can't control what's happening in another environment, for sure. I would say that again, structure and predictability help kids feel safe. So having the same rules and boundaries and routines at your house are going to be really helpful for them. I would give them time to decompress when they get back. Don't place a lot of demands right away. Just have a snuggle session and, bath time, like whatever is going to be calming in that moment. And like, don't ask a ton of questions. I think that's one big thing too. After any separation from our kids, we want to know how things went, right? Whether they're coming back from school or, time away at grandma's house or at another parent's house. But I would just sort of hold space for them to hug you, just be with you and breathe and connect again, especially if they've had a hard time. Okay. Anyone else has any more questions, feel free. I'm just going to, go through a few other points and then, we can finish up with any more questions. So a big reminder, make sure you acknowledge and praise the behaviors that you want to see more of. That's really, really important. We also want to model the behaviors that we want our kids to demonstrate. So, if our kids they're always watching and listening, right, to us. And if they're seeing us have a strong reaction when something doesn't go our way, they may start to do it themselves, right? So I would model the calming and coping strategies that you want your kids to do. So you can like kind of set this up. It can be a little bit contrived. It doesn't always have to be in real time, but I might be like, oh man, I ripped my paper. Okay, I'm gonna just throw this one away and get a new one. Or, oh no, I broke my favorite cup. I'm gonna, get the broom and sweep it up, and then I'll have to get a new cup. right? So you just model the coping strategies and the breathing techniques, or if you say, if you're really upset about something, if you're really upset about their behavior, you can tell them like, I'm feeling really frustrated right now. I need a timeout. I need a moment. I'll be right back. And then model going to the refrigerator, getting a drink of water, model stepping outside for a breath of fresh air. Say, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I need a minute. I'll be right back. Those are really important things for our kids to see, whether we're, playfully contriving the situation or we're practicing it in real time, because they are going to copy what we do and they're going to copy what we say. So we want to make sure we're modeling what we want them to do. Okay, so a quick review, the why behind our child's behaviors. 4 reasons why kids or people in general behave the way they do. They want something, they don't want something, they need attention and connection, or it feels good to them. If you can figure out the why by looking at what happens before and after the behavior, then you will figure out how to teach a replacement behavior, right? If they need your attention, then you teach them to sign mama or say mama, or say, hey mom, I could really use your help. Whatever their skill level is, it doesn't matter. You can teach them to ask appropriately for your attention, right? If they want something, teach them to ask for it. If they don't want something, then allow them to say, I don't want that. I don't want to do that right now. And maybe they don't have a choice. It's something like brushing teeth, but there's always a choice to give them, right? If they don't have a choice about that something, about if they don't have a choice about doing the activity, you can give them a choice of how or where or when they do it, right? So think about that, how you could incorporate choices into unwanted activities, or teach them to ask for help, teach them to ask for a break if something is just too long or too difficult for them. Okay, there's always a reason why our kids don't want to do something. Let's see. And then if it feels good, they can ask for time to do that thing. Maybe you don't want them to jump on the couch, but give them an alternative to jump on the floor or jump on the trampoline, something like that. With the phone, when their attention seeking gets to a tantrum level, how do you deal with that? Great question, Shana. So I would say you want to give the attention before it gets to the tantrum level, right? Because if you're giving in way up here, that's where it's going every time. So I would also let them know before you get on the phone, if you can, like, hey, I have a phone call. I'm going to need you to do this thing. Give them an activity to do while I'm on the phone. And make sure that they can be occupied ideally, but that when they do come to you, if you know that you're going to have to give your attention at some point, give in low, give in to the mommy, 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 or even a little whine like, mommy, I need you. All of that's better than giving into the whine, the crying and the falling to the floor and the hitting. So that's what I would say for the phone. Okay. Any other questions? I will say that I'm on ParentGood. You can schedule a free 15-minute session with me if you want to just share a little bit more about your situation and about your child, and I can let you know if I think I can help you. And I do offer a variety of services and packages that you can find on my profile page. How to stop answering back and disrespectful words. Okay, rude talk. Rude talk is a challenging one for sure. Again, figure out the why. Is it that they want something, they don't want something, or they want your attention? Typically, it's for attention in some way that we're giving them a reaction. I think the good news about this type of behavior is it's likely that your child is a little bit older, so they have some reasoning skills. And so you can just let them know, like, hey, bud, you know what? In this house, we speak respectfully to each other. If you want something, you need to ask me nicely, and have them say it appropriately, and then you give it to them. right? You don't give them what they want when they're speaking in a way that's not okay with you. And then this is also where I think ignoring can be helpful. Like in parenthood, right, we have to pick our battles. And if your kid mutters something under their breath, it might drive you insane, but you don't have to respond, right? Or, so things like eye rolling, an occasional rude comment under their breath, a door slamming, those are behaviors that you don't necessarily have to turn around and say, why are you doing that? Don't do that. That's not okay. Kind of file it back in your mind, maybe jot it down in your phone, like, okay, I'm noticing a pattern here. Like every time, it's time for swim practice, he's like really talking back to me. Or every time, it's time for a geometry test, like, oh gosh, I'm noticing this particular behavior because there's an underlying reason. And so the rude talk, disrespectful talk, that's just sort of a symptom of the underlying reason. And so, you can control it to a certain extent by controlling what happens after, by controlling your consequence, but you really want to try to get that need met. And maybe they'll open up to you. I really am a big fan of like having one-on-one time right before bedtime, especially with big kids, because they may be more willing to open up to you when it's just like you and them hanging out in their room, just, relaxing and trying to talk about the day. Okay. So yeah, if anyone else has any more questions, I will happily take them. Let's see. Okay, I think that's it. Feel free to reach out to me. You can send me a message or book a free 15-minute session with me if you want to share more information or figure out, how I can help you and your family. I've had so much fun. I love this app. I think it's such an amazing way to connect parents with professionals, like in a really speedy manner. And I love working with all of the families here. So thank you guys so much for joining today. I hope that you found it helpful, and don't hesitate to reach out with questions. Okay. Thank you. Oh, there you are. Hi, Hadar.
Mariko, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm like having technical difficulties over here.
Thank you for being here today. It was an awesome session.
Thank you.